Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Grimcoven, which is brought to you by Awakened Realms. It's for 1 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games generally run about 90 to 270 minutes. Grimcoven is a miniature boss battler game set in a dark Victorian universe where only the hunt matters. You will take on the role of a hunter fueled by lament, who has signed a pact with a coven of other hunters to venture on one of many modular boss battles. Every character has a distinct development tree you can use to advance, build, and execute your unique combos, such as teleporting into any space on the map, gathering lament, gaining extra dice, and firing up a devastating attack on the boss. Sometimes a special electricity dice will help you power up your armor, while other times you will forge magical bullets to be fired at the right moment. Each game you will choose from multiple arenas, bosses, elites, and possible adventures. Every game is different and exciting. Instead of following a scripted campaign, dive right into a boss battle for an intense gameplay session. Every boss offers a unique gameplay challenge, and bringing them down will be tactically demanding. You must work together and take full advantage of the arena and its resources to achieve your goal. During combat, strategically use dice allocation to move around the board, fire up different combos, and gather lament to grow in strength. Build your character in rogue-like fashion and try to claim the ultimate prize. Collect too much lament, however, and you may turn into one of those beasts you are sent to hunt, with your fellow hunters unable to aid you in time. The goal of each scenario is to defeat a boss, a mighty grief-bound, but if you or any of your fellow hunters falls to the darkness, the game is lost. So when it comes to Awakened Realms, you absolutely expect high-end quality, and even in this prototype you see that here. From the miniatures to the different portals and all the components and everything going on. And of course, this is just prototype and it's pretty amazing in this state. So I can't wait to see what they do with it in the future when they publish and all the upgrades and things they're going to be adding, which add a huge list of things. You know, I only got to experience 2 scenarios, and with just 2 different bosses and a limited select number of things you can do, and really kind of a 2-player game, but it will play up to 4 when it finally comes out, and it just does not disappoint. And the thing here is that it is dripping with theme. And when I say that, I am not kidding, because I am someone who loves theme, and I could not believe how immersed they made me feel in this game. And it started off with an app that just simply is not something you need to use in the game at all, but it does help you and lead you through a setup, but it does give you nice story, as well as diving into the mythology of what's going on and why you're there. The story elements are fantastic, with incredibly well active narrative. And of course, it's all in an app on your phone, and a new hunt begins.
The great hunt is endless. Ever since the walls of Crowholm fell, the lands drown in lament. Each generation, our suffering brings forth more of this poison, and with lament come monsters. From simple wretches to the fearsome grief-bound.
And from there, the theme carries on even more when they give you this letter, this pact to sign as one of the hunters with calligraphy pen and ink. This was really a fun part of the game experience for me. I couldn't believe all the bells and whistles they put into this prototype. Just a ton of fun. So in this game, you're going to be taking on the role of one of these hunters. Now, this is a boss battler. So right out of the gate, you're going to be taking damage. You are really going to be taking a lot of damage throughout the course of the game. Even on your first turn, you might get really hit hard. So it is a difficult game, and you will need to use all your resources and all the resources in the world in order to gain in strength and take on that boss. But your hunter will have its own board, which slots into the larger board. And what's neat here is that you have very different types of hunters, and you'll have their health along with a special ability, and finally their movement. And some of the hunters, like the gunslinger, might have an action slot and bullets, which makes sense, right? But on the other side of this board is what you may become if you get corrupt enough. And if you do, there's 2 different miniatures actually, showing your regular side and your more corrupt side, which are some really cool miniatures around that for sure. But as you gain in that corruption, it does bad things as well, because you will be pulling corruption cards, and based on how much corruption you have, all kinds of things can happen. And that's part of the phases that you're going to be going through as a hunter. Now, also on your board, you have all your action slots, and over on the left, you're going to have dice that you'll be able to slot in there. At the beginning of the game, you get to pick an armor and a weapon, and you'll get dice based on those cards. So those dice you'll be rolling at the top of your turn, and you'll be able to slot them into the different basic actions or use them on those cards that you drew for armor and for weapons. So various uses around those dice for sure, and there's even an assist token that you can help your other players out with. You also have on the other side of your board, you'll see where you're gathering your wounds and stats effects, like you might be on fire, things like that. And you'll have armor potentially that you'll be gathering there as well. At the top is where you're going to be having all your different corruption. Now that comes from Lament. As you find these red cubes, right now they're red cubes out on the main board, you'll gather those up and then be able to spend those to gain in corruption. And it's key to do so because you gain in power and strength as you gain evolution cards. And it's an interesting choice because you'll draw 2 cards, choose one and put one at the bottom, or you can put both cards back and gain another dice. And of course, you have your boss board. You'll take his card and slot it into the board. Here we have the Convergence. I love this boss because he's terrible, obviously, but I love him because he's got these tornadoes and things that come out on the board. Everything here looks amazing as you dive in, but you'll see that the boss board has this various set of cards, event cards, you have minions and elites, and they did this really neat system of stepping you through which areas of the boss and cards you access through the boss or enemy phase of the game. I really like this, from 1 to 5, showing you where to go and what you're going to be doing next. So obviously as you play more and more, you'll know what to do and so forth. But I really like this aspect. It's something I wish more games would do because you're hunting for stuff around the table or whatever, but this was really clever and I will be using this all the time. Setup of the world will obviously be based on the boss and what you're doing for that particular adventure. But here again we have the Convergence, and I really like the aspects of the setup. Again, it leads you right through it. Through the app even, you can do the setup of the world. But the world has some neat things. It has some variability because you have these cards which are your environmental cards, and some will have aspects. Like here we have the carriage as well as the well, but there are some cards that actually slot into the board, so to say, like you have Holy Ground where you can do various things. So every time you play, even if it's the same adventure, you might have different types of environmental effects for that particular map. Out on the map, you'll find various things. You have portals, which I love these portals. They're so cool. But you'll be able to move around portals, getting you around the board a little quicker or to escape perhaps. And you've got treasure spots. You've got the minions and the elites that are out there. And of course, the boss. Yes, the boss starts on the map on turn 1, so be aware of that. There's also impassable areas. These nasty giant mounds of whatever are huge and you cannot get past them, obviously, to work your way around them. And you have Lament, which in this case again is just red cubes, but it may be something different in the final game. And then the various other things like the well and the carriage that we talked about. So lots of things around the map to keep in mind. There's different terrain types and of course line of sight. You've got to be able to pass through the middle of your hex and draw a straight line to the next middle of the hex that you're targeting in order to hit that enemy that's there. So you have various types of terrain that you got to keep in mind as you're playing this game as well. But setup here is just variable based on your boss. So the flow of the game comes down to 2 phases. You have the hunter phase, you have the enemy phase, and it'll continue this way until one of the hunters has been destroyed or you have defeated the boss. So it's really that simple, unless there's some other condition that the adventure calls for. But in general, that's what you're doing here. And for the hunters, first thing they're going to be doing is looking at evolution. Now, as you pick up Lament around the board, you don't immediately put it into your corruption track. So on your turn, in your evolution phase, you choose how much Lament to spend to put into your corruption track so you can start to draw those evolution cards. So again, you have choices here. You can draw 2 evolution cards, pick one and discard the other, or you can discard both and take a dice. But you really want those cards because that's part of the key thing to this game, is that you have to take corruption in order to level up, to build yourself up to take on the boss and do some real damage. So some really interesting cards within Evolution, like this one, the Protection Barrier, which I love. I really like the Technomancer. That's probably my favorite. I thought it was going to be the Gunslinger, but I really like this Technomancer. Really, really cool. Like his staff is the Tesla staff. So lots of neat things with this character. Really fun to play for sure. And it's important to note that whatever lament you choose not to spend on your corruption track, you will discard. And then you're going to be pulling one of these corruption cards. Based on your level of corruption, you're going to do various things here. It's all outlined at the very bottom. If you have 20 corruption, you will resolve a secret card, which I will not spoil here. You will have to play the game to discover that. But lots of things that can happen within these corruption cards based on your level. It really can sway things about how much corruption do you really want to take, because it is super valuable to become more and more powerful. And when you hit that level 10 of corruption, you'll be flipping over your character board, taking on that new persona, which is very interesting. That's a really interesting aspect of the game, actually. I love how you evolve and change evolution deck that you're tapping into through the corruption, because you might need to become super terrible to be super awesome and destroy the boss, which is something I really enjoy about this game. And then next up on your turn, you're going to be refreshing your dice. You'll grab all your dice, roll it, and those are the symbols you're going to be working with. Now, some of your action slots don't require a specific symbol, but others do. And you'll be placing them on the basic slots or on your cards that you've acquired, and you get to perform 2 actions. So you need to be very mindful about what you're doing and what you're spending here. So before spending your dice and selecting actions, you can choose to cleanse by spending all your action dice that have magic symbols, and you can clear those status effects like bleeding or perhaps burning, but not hunger. Hunger cannot be cleared this way. It is definitely a harsh one, and you need to get rid of it, but you can't do it this way. And then you're going to be spending that dice on your various actions. Now, there's so many different actions with the cards. We're not going to do a deep dive into all of them, but just know that your goal is to attack, move, and attack, right? So that's a big part of what you're doing, and the card's very straightforward about when you attack, how much damage you do. Minions only have 1 point of health, and when you attack the boss, you'll be attacking different body parts, which is represented by their attack cards. And you'll see those values at the bottom of those cards. So you'll have to go after those and remove them from his body to take him out, right? So it is an interesting aspect around how you fight the boss and how you do damage for sure. So those are really the basics of what you're doing as one of the hunters. You're trying to evolve so you become bigger and more powerful, but you're using actions to move around the board, gather resources like lament, do various things, go through portals, position yourself to take out minions, elites, and fight the boss. And you're using your various actions to do that. And again, you're spending the dice. You might be getting more dice as you evolve your character. So those are key aspects for sure. But then after the hunters go, it's time for the enemy or the boss to go. And again, you can move through these steps. Now, step 1 is all about the events. Now, events may not be triggered yet. No card could be drawn, so you just skip that. And we'll talk about how and when that happens in a sec. Number 2 is all the minions move. They're going after, obviously, the hunters, and they're going to try to position themselves to attack. And then you have the elites who are going to do the same thing. And then you have the boss who's going to attack with his cards. So you got to be mindful about where he is, because what's neat here is that you can see what he's going to use and what he's going to use on his next turn. So these cards will advance through the boss board. Then step 5 of the boss is the time track, and it starts out in the middle, but it will loop around after it moves out from there. So the first thing it's going to do when it moves out is draw a new event card, and the next time it moves, it will activate his tornadoes for this boss. So you can see the time track is going to be very specific to the bosses for sure. And then the next time will be spawning minions, and minions are spawned based on player count, however many players there are. +2, I think it is. So for a 2-player game before. And then you go to the next stage, and there's stage cards for the boss that get put into play as well. And then it loops back around to drawing a new event card. So as the time evolves, things get worse and worse. And you can see on the boss board, there's different types of attacks that it's going to be doing as well. Some basic things for it, and for the tornadoes for this particular boss, and then true for the minions and the elites. And there are dice. They have their own specific dice that they'll be rolling and attacking with, very critical as well. But it really is that simple. It truly is a battle game, a boss battler. So you hope that you come out on top by defeating the boss, but in my couple plays, I have not won yet. So it is a hard game. It is brutal, but it is a ton of fun. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview. Everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, that said, again, this is a very dark theme, and it is also dripping with theme. I really like that aspect. But, you are truly just trying to build yourself up to fight the boss, but you cannot just spin your wheels doing so. You have to engage immediately in this game. So getting Lament and getting some corruption at least to begin with, to get some of those bigger, more powerful cards to spend your dice on are definitely key things. And there's so many different types of evolution cards that can really enhance your character. And same with the different minions and elites, how their cards work, how they attack, who they go after is variable based on what type of minion or elite they are. And of course with the boss himself, he has his own set of attack cards, he's got his own abilities, and the stages and the events that come out really enhance what the boss can do to you in the end. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.